When did you first get introduced to music?
I think I was fourth grade. I was probably 9. I'm a kid who saw a music video and said, I want to do that.
What would you consider to be your greatest accomplishment at 46 years old?
Greatest accomplishment is still being married, I think. You know, I actually didn't know this until a couple years later. Julie was ready to call it quits.
So what would be a key to that success?
Raising 2 kids that, I wasn't the biological dad of, but, they're now grown, and I think there's things that I've taught them, and that's, kind of your legacy, I think, as a parent. It's what your kids wind up doing.
Well, thank you for having us in your beautiful home. Thanks for the chicken and waffles that we had. That was really delicious. We're in DeBary, Florida.
DeBary, Florida.
Okay, so how long have you lived here?
10 years.
So what brought you to this area?
Ultimately, we were driving around in this area. We had just seen a house in DeBary, and we saw signs for a subdivision that was being developed and, build homes, from whatever the price range was. And we stopped in just to kind of see what was going on. We liked what we saw. And on Easter Sunday, we signed the papers to build the house. Yeah. Part of that decision was based on location as well, because at the time, Julie worked in DeBary. She worked down the road for Cairo's Prison Ministries. The girls went to school in Deltona at Trinity Christian. I was working by the airport, by MCO, so I was the only one that really needed to have the biggest drive. But we were just kind of here, there, and everywhere. Church was in Lake Mary, and so we needed to have a little bit more of a centralized location because the kids were getting older, they wanting to do things. This location just made sense. So
let's get into what you do. You said you're fairly close by here. What is your profession? We're going to get into other things too. You are a musician. We're sitting in your music room. There's guitars on the wall. And that's how we met, of course, which we'll get into that, of course. But what do you do?
I manage a drape and lighting company, fabric company. Daisy has been around for more than 185 years. I think it got started in 1842, if I remember. And I got started with them, I guess at the end of 2015 was when I was hired. And so I manage the warehouse. I kind of watch over the installation team. I do some inside sales. I make sure that the bills get paid, the lights stay on. There's a lot of different things that I do.
What did you start out doing?
I was hired to be the warehouse manager.
Okay. And do you have experience in that? Did you do that before?
No, actually I didn't.
Really?
No, I didn't. So I came to Daisy, and I worked at the Ritz-Carlton before then. I worked for PSAV and Swank Audiovisuals before then. And I was basically the equipment manager. Okay. So, making sure that we had enough, it could be mixers, it could be speakers, it could be any number of different things for breakout rooms, for general sessions, whatever. And 2015 was really difficult for me. It just about killed me. The property was insanely busy, and I was working, 60, 70 hours a week. I wasn't home as much, and when I was home, I still had to work. Moving to Daisy is really a part of this story because we had not been to church in years because I usually had to work on Sundays. And Julie got a wild hair one August morning and told the girls, get up, we're going to church. They got up and she had Googled Lake Mary Church in Lake Mary, Florida. Actually, it wasn't even that. She just Googled, churches in Lake Mary.
Nearby.
Yeah, churches in Lake Mary, Florida. Well, what comes up first? Lake Mary Church.
Yeah, it's a big church, right?
Well, it wasn't then, but it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty small back then.
Okay.
But they went and had an amazing time. And it happened to be a baptism Sunday, and Julie called me. It was lunchtime. She goes, we had this amazing experience, and Abby got baptized. And I'm like, wait,
whoa.
What? Now, our kids had just been baptized a year and a half before that. So I'm sitting here thinking, okay, what's going on? She goes, just don't say anything, just listen. Okay. Of course, I'm still working on Sundays. In order to go back to church, I was going to have a job that I didn't have to work on weekends. Well, in the audiovisual world, you work when the client says you work. So I had found Daisy, and I don't remember if it was Indeed.com or what it was, but I thought they were hiring, and the job had actually already closed. I sent a resume, I said, look, says the job's closed, I don't know if you've hired anybody. if you haven't, here's my resume. Thank you for your consideration. I mean, I didn't even do anything formal. There was no formal letterhead. I just said, I was at the point, I was just like, whatever happens, happens. Well, they called me, and they, did a couple of interviews, and Thanksgiving that year, I was negotiating terms for a new job.
That's great.
Now, what happened in between these two incidents, and this is within a couple of months, November, they do, I don't know how to describe it. It's not stewardship. That would be I think the Methodist term. They always focus on tithing in November at the church, yeah. Right? And they had given a sermon in which it was a 90-day challenge. Tithe for 90 days, and if you haven't experienced change in your life for the better, we'll refund your money, no questions asked.
Wow.
Yeah. Pretty bold, right?
That is very bold. Yeah.
We were raised in the church. We would not have done that, asked for our money back anyways, but we're like, okay, we'll bite. So we did that, and that was when we started tithing, that was when things started to change. That was when the new job came along. Okay, so now the new job, now I can go to church on Sundays. What does that mean for us? Now I can play on the worship team again. Now we can get involved in this, and this was something we'd been missing for a long time. So I know that's that's not exactly the Reader's Digest version, but my job is intertwined with
that blessing of coming back to church. So we'll get into that a little bit, the origin of that. Were you someone that had been involved with church from a young age, or is it something that is more of a revival, more recent revival for you?
No. Actually, that's a great question. So I was, my parents decided to start going to church in, I guess, probably the spring, summer of 1982. I was young. Before then, they were the, what we call CEO Christians, Christmas and Easter only. And I don't know really what sparked them to do that. I think they decided that they wanted their kids raised in the church because they recognized the values that came with it, and not having a clue as to what they were getting into. I think my mom did because she was raised in the church. My dad really wasn't. So she knew more about it than he did. So sometime in, spring, summer 1982, I'm a toddler. They said, we're going to go to church, and had no idea what the future held with that, but it changed their lives and ultimately changed mine and my sister's because we were raised that way.
Essentially, right.
Yeah.
Winter winds and summer heat, rain and snow and slush and sleet, bright sunshine and foggy air, weather everywhere. Well, whether it's cold or whether it's...
So let's get into music a little bit. Obviously, it's how we met. We were both on the worship team at Indian River Church in Titusville. When did you first get introduced to music?
Oh man, I've always been.
And is there a reason, or your parents or family or anything like that? It's just something you had interest in, huh?
No, I've just always been interested.
Was it always guitar?
Probably. My mom started me playing violin when I was 5.
Okay.
She enrolled me at the University of Texas, they used to call it the String Project. I don't even know if it's still around anymore, but it was mostly taught by college students, people getting their masters and PhDs. Saturday mornings when that was going on, there was 3 hours that you would go there and you would learn. There was like a master class, there was orchestral time, and then there was also music theory class that was taught as well. Mm-hmm. And so, that was the beginning of being in music for me. I mean, violin, for me wasn't the most exciting thing in the world. If I could have had a guitar at the time, I would have jumped on that, in a New York minute.
So when did you eventually get into guitar?
I started when I think I was 4th grade. I was probably 9.
Okay.
I wanted to do it, and I think they recognized that, but I never thought that it was really a reality. One Saturday, my dad worked at the Texas Capitol, and so I was with him on a Saturday. And on the way back home, we stopped at a music store in downtown Austin, and they had this little small, half-size, classical guitar. I says, well, hold that thing up, see if this is about the right size. And he's talking to the salesman, and I'm sitting there, tinkering with the thing. And he's like, "We'll take it." I said, "What? I mean, what did I just hear?" And so we brought it home, and he said, "Look," he said, we're not going to turn you loose on this. You're going to have to take some lessons for a while." Okay, great. Who's going to teach me lessons? Bill Kroc, who was the music teacher at my elementary school, he taught guitar lessons, and I didn't know that at the time. So they said, Mr. Croc's going to teach you how to play, and he can show you how to tune it and how to do those things. And so I probably did that for maybe 2 years or so.
So did you pick up on it and know, like, because I know for me with drums, I had an instant connection to that instrument. Yeah. Was that the way it was for you in guitar, or was it just like you picked it up and didn't really feel comfortable?
No, I felt comfortable with it immediately, and having had a musical background for the past 4 years
and holding
already,
a stringed instrument,
I already knew the mechanics of it, and so I had already had a lot of ear training.
That's pretty impressive.
As well as being able to read music. I could already read music. Then by the time I got to probably middle school, a good friend of mine who's no longer with us, unfortunately, he was learning how to play also, and his dad had played, back in the 70s with a band that had opened for ZZ Top and lots of popular Texas groups at the time. And so Jeremy and I were learning how to play at the same time, so I might learn how to play a song and I'd show him how to play it, or he might learn a song and he'd show me how to play it.
Did you ever get into where you wanted to be, a rock star and write your own music and all? I mean, were you
since I was 5 years old?
Yeah. So
at the end of the day, and I realize I'm dating myself by saying this. I'm a kid who saw a music video and said, I want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, so did I.
So for me, that video was Dire Straits' "Money for Nothing."
Okay.
I mean, and like I said, I realize I'm dating myself by saying that because the song itself is very dated. But hearing that, I'm like, what is that?
We got some movies, color TV.
Into the electric guitar. Okay, well, I want to do that.
Well, that's pretty prominent electric guitar.
It is. Yeah. It's a dream I've chased for 40 years and still haven't got to it. But
did you get? I mean, how close did you get? Were you in some successful local bands and things like that?
Big success, no. I went to college in San Angelo, Texas, which is 3.5-4 hours northwest of Austin. Maybe 90,000 people. There's not a big city feel to it at all. I mean, it's just at the tip of West Texas, and so music was booming back then. I know since COVID, it's dwindled a little bit, But back then, we were, you could go. There were bars that everybody wanted to play at, and you had to play at these places in order to be somebody. And I played at most of them with just various groups. And then when I was, I guess 21, I got a phone call from a guy who said, "Hey, would you like to come try out for our band?" I didn't even know who they were. So, okay, great. What kind of music do you play? So we play country music. I've never played country music before. I said, sure. I said, I'll do it. And they had a rehearsal was on Tuesday, if I remember correctly. They said, be here at 8:00 because there's another guy who's trying out at 7. So I showed up. I don't even remember what we played that night, to be honest with you. But I had no idea what I was doing. I had to wing the whole thing. And he called me a day or two later and asked me if I wanted to come play for him. And I'm like, how did I get this job? I had no idea.
So what is your relationship to music now? Obviously, you play on a couple of worship teams, but you also have a band. So where's your, how does music look for you today?
Well, it's a lot different today because the advantage of being older is having lived that life, having been on the road, having played with lots of different places, and having that experience is everything. Did
that band get on the road, that country band? Were you guys a touring band?
So, touring, no, but it was big sound. So, you weren't likely to find us playing at a bar, but we would play a festival. I mean, and there was big sound, big lights, which was a lot of work to set up, by the way. But sounded great. I mean, the first time, when you're doing sound check and you hear that kick drum going through, four 18-inch speakers, I mean, you're like, wow, this is really cool.
Yeah.
You want to be here. You want to be doing this. And so, the advantage to being, I think, older now is having seen, the good, the bad, the ugly of it, and now I play mostly for God, which is a blessing as well.
I agree.
But I also, the band that I play with now, we're a bunch of guys that met at church. And everybody in the band plays at a church. We're a 6-piece band, but we're a bunch of guys that are there because we want to be there. We don't, we all have jobs. We're not trying to make it big anymore. We're not out doing crazy stuff. We're all married. We're dads. We're grandpas.
Doing it because you love it.
We're doing it because we want to do it. And there's not, a leader saying you have to do it this way or we have to do this.
No pressure.
No, absolutely not. It's like, if we'll play something, and if it works, great. If it doesn't work, okay,
Scrap
let's scrap it and move on to something else. So it's a lot of fun. It's 6 guys that care about each other, that just want to happen to go out once in a while and play.
So God, you mentioned that now you play for God. What is your relationship with God?
God is everything. And the reason why is because I've seen the changes in my life that He's brought.
For example?
Well, what I was talking about when we went through the process of getting a new job and being able to go back to church and being able to, build a house and being able to do a lot of other things. See, there's more to that story, because we started Foundations at Lake Mary Church, in January of 2016. And I've spoken with you about this before, and I don't mean for this to be a plug for that by any stretch of the imagination. But it was life-changing for us, because even though Julie and I both grew up in the church and we both knew a lot, we hadn't heard things articulated this way. And so, to be able to hear, okay, this is how the enemy attacks us. Okay.
Can you, just before you go too far down the road, you mentioned Foundations. What is that?
So Foundations, it's really a class. It's a class. It's an experience. It's learning how how to fit in, as a Christian. It's learning, what is God. It teaches, what the enemy is, how the enemy attacks us. It talks about what we call, root spirits. These are things that we're not even aware of that get at us, that cause problems in our marriage, our employment, every aspect of our lives. So we learn how to combat those, be aware of it, and get rid of it. And then after we've gotten rid of all that stuff, then we move on to the part about learning how to, I hate to use the word evangelize, but that's kind of what it is. It's learning how to bring people to God, to introduce people to Jesus. They call it it's called a 4E church. There's establish biblical foundations. Mm-hmm. There's engage the community. That's the last one. 4E. So I'll think of it here in a minute, and then I'm going to wind up interrupting another
no biggie,
question.
I can edit.
But there's it's not about keeping all this stuff to yourself. It's about sharing it with other people.
Of course,
we want to bring other people into this, because we want people to experience the freedom that we've experienced. So we went through Foundations. Big changes. I mean, problems we didn't even know we had. And we're able to get rid of all of that. And from then on, it changed our marriage, because we understood each other better spiritually. We could understand, I'm dealing with this right now, or Julie's dealing with this right now. And it helped us not only be better, spouses, but it helped us be better parents as well. It changed our life in almost every way possible.
What does it mean to have a relationship with God on a daily basis for you?
So it starts first thing in the morning. We do devotion together.
You and your wife, Julie. We're going to get into Julie here in a minute too. We haven't asked about Julie yet.
We do devotion together. Now, when the kids were still at home, they were part of that also. So now it's just us. So you
brought the kids into it.
Oh, absolutely.
Did the kids enjoy doing it? Did they resist it? Yeah.
No. I think they did. They saw the value in it. They're teenagers, so I'm sure. They were teenagers at the time, so I'm sure that they didn't. There were times in which they probably didn't want to.
I roll.
It was very important to us, and still is. So that's how our morning starts every day. It starts with devotion and with prayer. In the evening, prayer is the last thing that happens before we go to bed. And it doesn't matter how tired we are, if we fall asleep on the couch and have to get up and go to bed, whatever. That's the last thing that happens.
So let's get into Julie a little bit. You've mentioned her name quite a bit. Julie is your spouse.
Equip. I told you gonna. I told you.
Equip.
Yeah, you were gonna. I knew that you were gonna ask me something else. Okay. So establish biblical foundations. Equip the believer. Empower the believer. Engage the community.
I love it.
4 E's. Rinse and repeat. Establish biblical foundations. Equip the believer.
I love the equipped to believer. That's discipleship.
Right,
yeah.
right. Empower the believer. So that's at that.
Yeah.
During empower, we're saying, okay, this is how you do this, right?
Yeah.
We're going to say now it's your turn to go out and spread this to other people who don't know Jesus. And then when you do engage, that's engage the community. Okay, the community could be Publix. It could be. It could be your neighbors. It could be just about anywhere. For me right now, it's driving to Titusville, Florida on Sundays sometimes. But it's a rinse and repeat thing.
Yeah, I love it. All right, so let's get into Julie. How long have you been together? First of all, let's get a little further. You met where? What was that like? And then how long have you been married?
So we met at Aloma United Methodist Church in 2008. Julie was the business administrator. I was the media director, basically. And she was originally structured as my boss, believe it or not, which didn't make a lot of sense, but that's just kind of how it was. And so, once in a while she'd check in with me. Hey, how are things going? Yeah, well, they're great. We're trying to do this and trying to do this. Okay, great. Nothing real big to it. And in 2009, things were not good with her husband, her ex-husband. And they wound up getting divorced, and we were friendly. We were friends. When I was in college, I was engaged and with somebody for about 3 or 4 years that had a small child. And after that, the whole relationship crumbled, which is part of how I wound up to Florida in the first place. After that crumbled, I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I cannot be with somebody that has children because that breakup. Because he was a baby.
You were attached to.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He was a baby, and he was going into he would have been in kindergarten about the time when we broke up, and so I couldn't deal with that.
That was the case with Julie, right?
So not with her per se, but
meaning she had children.
Oh, right, yeah, right.
Yeah.
When Julie came along, she was not what I was looking for. I was like, I can't go through this again. But we became friends, and a relationship was forming, and the kids, I think, were starting to become attached to me. Probably Abby more so than Annalyn. There was one day in which we were going someplace, I don't remember where it was, and the girls always wanted to hold hands, because they were little at the time. You always have to hold hands, when you're in the store and crossing the street and stuff like that. So, Julie said, well, Abby, why don't you go hold Drew's hand? Drew doesn't have anybody, any hand to hold. So Abby was usually the one who held my hand. And, we got home that day, and she's like, Drew, I love you.
Oh.
I thought, I'm in deep crap.
You're
deep crap.
So what would you say would be a key to you said 16 years you guys have been married?
No, so we've been married, Labor Day 2012, so 13 years.
Okay, so what would be a key to that success?
God.
If you're 13, God?
Yeah.
And so what is that? What do you mean by that?
So
everybody has a different answer, so I'm curious.
No, it's a great question. So for us, and I hate going back to the foundations thing, but before I actually didn't know this until a couple years later. Julie was ready to call it quits when we went through foundations. She was not happy
between the two of you.
Between the two of us,
okay.
Yeah. And I, like I said, I didn't know this until a couple years later. But I didn't. Things were great, but I didn't think they were, to that point. But like I said, because it changed our marriage, because it changed the way that we, act with each other, the way that we interact with the children, the way that we pray. Because it changed us in every aspect. I have to say that God is the key to it. And I know people that have been married for years, of which one of them's a believer and one of them isn't, and it works. And God has a hand in that. I don't pretend to know how it works. I'm not God, but having God at the front of our marriage not only saved it, but it drives it every day.
One of the things about religion in general, and especially when you're talking to humans and our craving to be logical, right? We want to think things through and convince ourselves of them before we we actually, believe them. And one of the things we're told to do as Christians is share our testimony, right? So it's important to know what that testimony is and to actually show people, well, this is where it's really changed me. So is there one thing that you just saw changed by putting God first in your marriage?
The way that we interacted with each other was an immediate change.
In what way?
Less quick to get angry.
Okay.
The things that we say, the way that we behave each other when
Okay, let me ask you, did that just come naturally by putting God first? I mean, and what I mean by that is, like, you get up every day, you do devotional, and so you're starting to create a rhythm for yourself where you're learning the Word, you're praying more, you're developing a relationship with God. Was it something that came natural, or was it a conscious effort?
I think it was probably a little bit of both. I think because after we became aware of the things that we struggled with individually, it helped us treat the other person differently, if that makes any sense.
It does.
If I struggle with anger or pride, I can be aware of that now. Say, okay, I'm not going to let this back in. I'm not going to let this haughty spirit back in, and I'm going to try to, we're going to take this to God, and we're going to pray about it, and we're going to try to, get this figured out. This is an ongoing thing, by the way. It wasn't like we went through this and all of a sudden things were just,
none of it's
great.
Overnight.
It's an everyday thing.
It is an everyday thing. It's very important that people understand it is an everyday thing. All right, so what would you consider to be your greatest accomplishment at 46 years old?
Greatest accomplishment is still being married, I think.
That is the number one answer, by the way.
That's the work of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Greatest accomplishment, I think, is not only that, but I mean my kids. Raising two kids that I wasn't the biological dad of, but they're now grown, and I think there's things that I've taught them and got them interested in and shown them, and that's kind of your legacy, I think, as a parent. It's what your kids wind up doing, and Anna Lynn is at Biola University in LA. She's married now, and they're studying psychology and philosophy and things like that, and they're gonna have a ministry and be world changers. And as a dad, I mean, that's all you could want for your kids. They both love God. They're every day is a struggle for them. They're still the same way it is for us. They're still trying to figure everything out. Having been a part of that and getting to raise them and getting to see the fruits of that labor. I mean, that wouldn't have been any different as if I'd made them biologically. I mean, they are my kids.
Yeah, I think that's great. What do you do to get a break from the grind? And all that you do, your work, relationship with the wife and kids and all that, what do you do to kind of escape? Hobbies? I'm sure music's part of that.
Music's just part of it. It's just such a part of my life. I mean, it's escape, it's worship, it's fun. I mean, that's what I do. Julie and I we'll take a couple of vacations a year, just kind of mini vacations. We like to go to the mountains in Georgia, and we'll just go for a couple of days or for a week or whatever. Anytime we feel like your work is just getting to be too much, let's get out of here for a couple of days. And we don't have to, we'll take the dogs with us. We don't have to do anything. We can sit around and do nothing. We can work up there if we need to. We can do just about anything. We can go to apple orchards, we can go to distilleries or wine, vineyards or whatever, just to get out of the everyday norm and the everyday grind. And that's one of the things that together we do. Individually, I mean, it has to be music.
You have a pretty extensive record collection here.
Yeah.
Do you often sit in here and listen to music?
Yeah, I mean, my turntable gets used every day.
Does it?
Every
you
day.
just put something on and let it play throughout the house?
Dude, it could be, it could be rock and roll. It could be, I was listening to bluegrass this morning because it's Saturday. It could be folk music. It could be, just about anything. I'm the student of all music. I'm not just a rock and roll guy. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I like to listen to. What you see in the shop, this is an old Edison machine.
It's really nice.
This was my great-grandparents'. I've had this has been in my family since the early 1920s. That's, when my grandfather passed in 2009, he wanted me to have that. And it took my dad a while. My dad wanted it for a while, so he's like, no, you can't have this yet. But when we moved into this house, he finally relented and let me have it. But it's, I think sometime in the 60s, my grandmother took it apart and painted it white. She kept plants in it and stuff like that. And then for, a couple of decades, it sat out in their garage just collecting dust with a blanket over it. And so when they moved, when my grandfather got to where he couldn't live by himself anymore, Dad took it back to their house and completely restored it. I mean, to the point of, getting, in there with a dental pick, and trying to get all the white paint out of it. And he, refinished it and everything. So,
Really
it's
cool.
It's a family heirloom.
Can't wait to hear it.
Yeah.
Well, Drew, thank you so much for having us here, telling your story, sharing your insights, and for being, of course, a part of the band. It's been a pleasure playing with you and getting to know you.
Love it.
Thank you for sharing your story, man, and being on our channel.
Thanks, man. Really appreciate it.
For Drew, God, family, and music are a part of the foundation of who he is. From this foundation, he has built an inspired life. He is proof that with God at the center, a life of fulfillment is not only possible, but is a reality. Thank you, Drew, for the chicken and waffles and for sharing your story. Until next time, thank you for watching.
Winter winds and summer heat, rain and snow and slush and sleet, bright sunshine and foggy air, weather everywhere.